We're good. It being 7:07, I'm calling the Clinton Board of Selectmen meeting for Wednesday, April 22nd to order. The first item on our agenda is I'd like to have a moment of silence for the passing of former selectman, former school committeeman, and former Board of Health member Bob Pasquale. He served the town in a number of capacities. He was an outspoken advocate for the things that he believed in. I personally considered him a friend, and I hope he felt the same way about me. Our condolences to his family, but he did serve the town well and for a long period of time. So a moment of silence, please. Okay, first item on our agenda is review of the minutes for April 8th. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the minutes from April 8th.
Is there a second? Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Michael? Aye. Unanimous? Next item on the agenda is a discussion of the 2021 draft town budget. Does the board mind if we pass over the budget discussion and do our administrative business and old and new business first?
Absolutely.
No objection? Under old and new business, oh, wait a minute, Michael. Do we have administrative business? We do not, okay. Michael Ward, I'm sorry, Mike Jakoinski. Under old and new business, award of the Berlin Street roadway improvements contract. Chris?
So last week, we bid the project for the Berlin Street roadway improvement project. Project entails milling and overlaying the entirety of Berlin Street from the top of Cameron Hill, so a little part of Oak Street there, from the top of Cameron Hill all the way out to the town line. It also includes granite curbing and concrete sidewalks for a portion of the project, basically from the top of Cameron Hill up to in the vicinity of West Ledge. Once you get beyond that point, sidewalks are pretty much impossible. You got wetland crossings and tremendous amount of ledge outcroppings. Nothing's impossible, but it'd be very difficult. And it makes sense going up that far. It gets to basically the last big subdivision up there. And the bid came in, the low bidder was E.H. Perkins, who we've worked with several times in the past. They did the Water Street project. They're under construction right now out here on Walnut Street and several others. Their bid was well below the engineer's estimate. Engineer's estimate was about a little under $1.5 million, and the bid came in at $1,065,000. So I'm recommending that we award the contract to E.H. Perkins, and if they're awarded, they are ready to start construction basically immediately.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we go ahead and give the bid, as Mr. McGowan is, to E.H. Perkins Construction Company.
Second.
Is there any discussion? The motion is to award the Berlin Street roadway improvement contract to E.H. Perkins in the amount of $1,065,000. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Sean.
just for public information, any idea when this project's going to be able to start?
Almost immediately.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Anyone else? Being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sean?
Aye.
Unanimous? Chris, next item on our...
First, before we move on to the next item, just might need a vote on, because we are going to use Chapter 90 money. I'm going to use what's left over from previous years, plus hopefully they'll be allotting the money for this fiscal year. You haven't heard anything yet on that, Michael, on when it'll be coming?
No.
But we did get, I think they're gonna be at least giving us the
Yeah.
amount that we.
Yeah, it'll be about
We got notice
300,000.
that they'd given us the amount, but when it's coming or whether.
When it
to
comes,
come
we
back on
don't
that,
know.
We don't know.
But it'll be a combination, so it'll be Chapter 90 money plus money that we appropriated at last year's town meeting, the $1.5 million for infrastructure improvements. But I am gonna deplete as much of Chapter 90 as I can on this project first, so just, because we'll need signatures on the Chapter 90 request as well.
So, but you don't need any action from the
I
board
really don't
tonight
need
for
action,
that?
I just want you guys to know that's
Okay.
what we'll be doing.
So
Okay.
we can just, they can't hear him too
Repeat what Chris just
well.
said?
Just a little, just summarize it.
That Chris has indicated to the board that his intention is to utilize any excess Chapter 90 money before utilizing the appropriations from town meeting for this project. Okay. Next, Chris?
All right, our next contract, it's a contract amendment. This is for the landfill project and the pond dredging project. It's a substantial project that we're getting ready to go out to bid on. We've been talking about this pond dredge for about as long as I've been here, probably 13, 14 years. We've been trying to get this thing permitted. We finally got through the first of kind of a springboard of permits that we need is the Clinton Conservation Commission, and we were verbally given approval for that order of conditions this past week or 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago now, probably. And we'll be getting that, and that springboards us to be able to get the Lancaster Conservation Commission to approve their portion of the notice of intent. We have a Army Corps of Engineers permit, which we've been working on, 2 different state permits, a 401 water quality certificate, a Chapter 91 waterway certificate. There's a landfill amendment to allow the soils to go on to the landfill. So there's a string of permits that we've been working on, and we're finally in a position where we think they'll all be coming relatively quickly. So we're gonna be moving forward this summer on the pond dredging portion of that project. It's estimated to be a $3.5 million project. It's about a 8-acre dredging project, dewatering of portions of South Meadow Pond. You have to treat everything you dewater is going to be treated. It's a very big project. So the other portion of this contract amendment would be for the first 10 acres of the landfill closure. So we're hoping to bid this spring and to go under construction beginning of the summer for about 10 acres of landfill closure. So this would be oversight of that project as well. And it also includes all of the general work that they've been doing for the past 8 years while we're running the landfill, including topographical surveys, environmental monitoring that has to be done, and any other support that we need, which is quite a bit. So it's a very large number. It's $470,000 engineering project. And like I said, it was a $3.5 million pond dredge plus about a $1.5 million landfill cap. So it's in support of about a $5 million total project value.
Okay, and what's the name of the engineering
So
firm?
the engineering firm is Brown and Caldwell. They're the company we've had working on this project from the beginning, and the total amount of the bid is, or their proposal, which is it's basically a not-to-exceed amount of $472,155.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I move that we authorize Chris McGowan to move forward with the, excuse me, what was the name of the company again?
Brown and Caldwell?
With Brown and Caldwell for the purpose of landfill engineering amendment.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Before we vote, do I need to summarize, nobody can hear this? Mike?
No, I think that sometimes they can't hear Chris, but if they're listening at home, they should be able to.
I heard it,
Okay.
I can hear it.
I
Okay.
can hear it.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Okay, good.
Yeah, they probably hear it from me in front of the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. There being no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, gentlemen. I can't see you, so I don't count you. Next item is a discussion on seeking legislation to cancel the town caucus for this year. Michael, do you want to brief the board a little bit on that?
Sure, I think if I could ask for some help from town council as well too, just to kind of talk a little bit about where we are with the town caucus.
Yeah, so currently the town caucus is scheduled for May 1st. Our election is scheduled for June 8th. Under the statute, the caucus has to be held 38 days before the election. Problem we have is that on May 1st, we're still within the governor's order, with the 10-person limit. So I've been in contact with Rep. Naughton's office, and we're trying to see if we can coordinate. There's some other towns that have the same problem that we have. Because right now, we can't push our election out. Under the special legislation that got passed, only if your election was scheduled in the month of May could you push it out to June. We were already scheduled in June, so right now we have no flexibility with the election. So you still have to back out the caucus to 38 days. Representative Naughton's office is working with trying to maybe get some special legislation, emergency legislation passed, where towns potentially could just cancel the caucus. And or push the election, even the election out, maybe even beyond June. They were talking about that, but that's all in a state of flux right now. Probably won't know until later in the week, or hopefully by Friday, whether or not, or what direction that's going to head. So as of right now, we're kind of in a holding pattern. I mean, no, it's only a week away. I mean, May 1st is what, next week, the end of next week. So as of right now, that's the date of our caucus, but we wouldn't be able to hold it because we're stuck with the 10-person limit.
Would it be inappropriate for us to, given the guidelines on holding meetings with large groups, for us to cancel holding the caucus because we're prohibited from holding the caucus?
Well, you really don't have, I mean, we could take that vote. We don't have the statutory authority to do that right now. You do under the special legislation that was passed, they did allow you to push the caucus out. But of course, that doesn't do us much good. We can push it out from May 1st to some future date, but then we'd still have the 38-day requirement to meet, and right now we can't move the election out either. But we could take a vote, a vote right now, at least to move the caucus out. We do have the authority to do that. But right now, we wouldn't be meeting the 38-day requirement, because if you move the caucus out, say 3 weeks, it's too close to the election. So that's the problem we have.
So we don't have the authority to move it out because of the 38-day requirement, and you're saying we don't have the authority to cancel the caucus without special legislation, but we also don't have the authority to hold the caucus under the guidelines. So I would propose that we step up, man up, and make the decision tonight to cancel the caucus, and hopefully the legislature will back us up in the future.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
As I understand it, we're prohibited from having a meeting of that size, right, as scheduled. We're prohibited from scheduling the caucus within the 38 days of the scheduled election. And even if we push the election out, we still wouldn't be able to accommodate that.
Right, I mean, another interim step might be since you do have the authority to push the caucus out, at least you can push the caucus out without canceling it. Even if you just push it out a week to buy an extra week of time, because you can push out the caucus. Now, we still wouldn't be within the 38 days, but we could still figure that out later, because maybe even special legislation could pass that allow us to move the election out closer to June 30th. There's talk of
Okay.
that.
How about a motion to request special legislation to cancel the caucus? End of story.
That's fine. I mean, we're marching. We've been doing that for the last several days.
But that demonstrates our intent to cancel the
That's
caucus
fine,
as well.
And Mr. Chair, and I think it would be, if the legislature did need some authority, if the board was already voted on record, then it
Right.
certainly would help,
Well, ironically, the way the legislation was passed that is allowing the elections to get pushed out from May to June, that legislation also ratified any votes that the Board of Selectmen had previously taken that might have been
Well, that's
contrary to
what-
statute, but we kind of missed that vote. So-
But I'm sort of expecting a similar action.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. But we can't hold the caucus as scheduled.
As of right now, we couldn't hold it on May 1st because we're still within the,
Right.
the May 4th, deadline.
Okay, so would you be, not be comfortable, but you wouldn't advise us against having a vote tonight to indicate our intention to cancel the caucus, or at least postpone it?
Yeah, I don't have a problem taking a vote to, like you just said, to pursue special legislation or postpone.
Right.
I wouldn't take a vote yet to cancel it.
Postpone it for the
How
week.
about to indicate our intention to cancel it?
That's fine, because what I was gonna say is very well, if special legislation gets passed, it gives the Board of, within the next several days, give the Board of Selectmen the authority to cancel the caucus. I then would request that we'd have to have a special Board of Selectmen meeting sometime next week to take that vote. But,
Okay.
go ahead.
How about a motion to seek special legislation to cancel the caucus and to postpone indefinitely until we have clearer guidance, the scheduling of the caucus?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we cancel the caucus.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor of taking a vote to cancel the caucus and seek special legislation?
Pending the results
approve
of, yeah, if we get told that we can't do it, then obviously we have to,
Right.
We'll
rescind,
regroup
but
then.
for now, we're voting to
We're
cancel.
voting to cancel it.
Aye.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Ma-
Mr. Chair?
Sean?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. We're voting to cancel the caucus and seek special legislation to ratify that decision.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Sean?
I'm gonna abstain on this one if that's okay.
Yes, please record Sean as abstaining on that one.
I'm up for reelection.
So, that's fine. You okay with that? Sean?
Yeah, I'm gonna abstain if that's okay.
Yes, yep. Okay, the next discussion we need to have is a conversation about rescheduling our municipal election. And I understand the legislation that was approved for most cities and towns does not apply to us because our election is scheduled for June 8th. And what I propose that we do is something similar, that we vote to indicate our intention to reschedule our general election for June 29th and seek special legislation to ratify that action. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we move the municipal election to June 29th, pending the results of legal counsel's investigation into that possibility.
And I'll second that motion.
Is there any discussion on that?
Mr. Chair, I'll be abstaining here too.
Okay. There being no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Mike Jacoinski?
Aye.
And Sean abstains. So 4 in favor, Sean Kerrigan abstaining.
A little bit of delay. There we are. Yes,
You're delayed?
just a second.
Okay. The next part of our conversation is about annual town meeting, and I'd suggest, I want to check one thing. We do have the ability to reschedule town meeting to any date we choose. I'd propose that we reschedule annual town meeting for the 22nd of June. And the reason I'm proposing that and suggesting that as well is because whatever the timelines are for reopening and and allowing groups to meet, the further along that we schedule these two events makes it more comfortable for the workers that have to manage the elections, and makes it more likely that people will be comfortable enough to come out for
get a
annual
quorum.
town meeting, to get a quorum. So,
And Mr. Chair, if I could add as well too, which I was going to talk under the budget, but also it would pertain to this issue as well because of the budget, which would be our main focus for the town meeting. The legislature right now is in a holding pattern. The House was supposed to vote on their budget next week, so we were hoping to get some direction on state aid because it's such a big component of our budget. but they're hoping to look at action on the federal level and the federal stimulus money to try to use that to back into any shortfalls of revenue for FY '21, so that they won't have to cut local aid as much. So they're talking right now that the House budget action will be at least 2 weeks out, maybe a little bit more. So the more time that we can have in June to wait for town meeting, it gives us a clearer picture as to what our local aid will be. We have the governor's number, which the board is going to work on tonight to come up with a proposal for the finance committee, but we know that's going to change. So how much is going to have a huge impact on what we do here in Clinton. So I appreciate, the board's action by giving us that time. It helps us to better prepare a budget as well. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with that. But have we started, I don't know if the Government Affairs Subcommittee, or have we started, or have other communities, or have anyone heard anything about how people are planning? I mean, I've heard ideas as crazy as like having town meetings in like a wide open outdoor area so that people can have social distancing measures. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I just think it's hard pressed to think by June that they're going to allow 250 people into a enclosed area. I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I would like to think that I would be happy if that was not the case, but I don't know who. I mean, I can certainly start thinking of ideas or asking around, but I think it might not hurt to start trying to be a little creative on how we think we're going to be able to accomplish this. We're not going to be in it alone. I mean, every other community is going to be in the same boat. So just the earlier we can start thinking of how we think we're going to be able to get around it, because this is it's unprecedented to.
The way the legislation is written too, town meetings could potentially be postponed beyond June 30th.
Okay.
Right, so if there's still a state of emergency, and then the Board of Selectmen in conjunction with the moderator feel that we shouldn't go forward, you're going to be able to postpone it beyond into the new fiscal year. That's the way the current legislation is even written.
Right.
And I'm sure there's going to be more coming, because like you just said, Ed, everyone's in the same boat here. There has been talk, we've heard some talk about people thinking about having them outside in stadiums, but
I don't know how we manage the security of
Right.
eligible voters versus, I guess that's not
Again,
our
that's gonna
problem,
be
that's the
down the
moderator's
road.
problem. But,
there'd be more to come on that. It'd be
Yeah.
quite difficult.
And
But
if we do go into July 1, it would be a 1/12 budget based on the current fiscal year. So people would have to live within 1/12 of their level funded budget to get started until we do have town meeting.
And the way that the legislation, or the order is written too, on the 10 limit, 10 people, doesn't apply to town meetings right now. It doesn't even apply to town. So right now, you could technically have the town meeting. If someone had a town meeting, you could pack in the people, because that order doesn't apply to town meetings. That's how it was written.
Again, this is all new waters.
yeah,
But there's gonna be
That's-
more, everyone's in this, all municipalities are in the
but
same
by
boat.
voting to postpone it now till the,
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
what, town meeting to the 22nd, at least it gives us a little bit more time to adapt and postpone again, or make contingency plans. So, could I have that motion to postpone town meeting to Monday, June 22nd?
So moved.
I'll second that.
There any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Sean?
just to echo what Ed said, yeah, pushing it back is going to help, but we're going to have to get creative. I mean, whether it's June 22nd or July 22nd, we have trouble getting 200 people when it's, a great night and there's not a pandemic. So we'll just have to put our heads together like everything else and be creative. But I hope people will understand what we're trying to do here.
I don't know what, forgive me, I'm not sure of the steps, but I think we would have to lower the quorum, and I don't know what steps we'd have to take. Do we have that? Does that have to be done at town meeting?
Has to vote to
Town
lower.
meeting, everyone's
Has to
gonna
be
do
at
that.
town meeting.
This is gonna be,
But there was some discussion too on special legislation to allow the selectmen to lower a quorum in order to get business done. So that's something
That's
that they're
another piece
discussing
that's
as well.
pending,
too. Right, yeah.
There's gonna be
Again, everything's
more,
up in the air.
there's gonna be more special acts coming out over the next several weeks.
We have to be creative.
Yes, we do, as we already are. So was that a motion?
Yes, and seconded.
I second it.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Unanimous to postpone
Town meeting.
town meeting to June 22nd. And could we communicate these actions to the town clerk and the town moderator? And maybe ask the moderator if he wants to participate in this discussion as we go forward? If he wants to come to the next meeting, or if we're considering other action?
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you, I will. And I did speak with the town clerk, and she supports whatever direction the selectmen go in. She is concerned about safety of her workers, as well as the process as well, too. But it's not going to automatically open up, and everyone's going to be comfortable being face-to-face with people. So, there's going to have to look for protective equipment and other supplies, and as the selectmen indicated, be creative in how we protect people. And so, thank you.
Okay, next item under old and new business is extension of payment of quarterly property taxes. Michael?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just again, part of this new special legislation, it does allow the Board of Selectmen to take a vote to extend the due date for property taxes for this quarter. They are due May 1st. That does give 30 days to June 1st, if it's something that the board would so entertain to try to help the townspeople. I did talk to the treasurer. He is supportive of it, if it's the direction the selectmen would like to go. He said collections are coming in pretty good right now. A lot of the mortgage companies and businesses, would be paying normally right away anyways, but if there are some people out there that are having a little bit of difficulty based on the economy, that he thinks it certainly would be a good thing if the board was so inclined. So it still requires that payment is be made before the end of the fiscal year. So fiscal year won't close till June 30th. So this just extends the deadline to June 1st, and then all other applicable laws would go in if people don't pay, that we would still have the process to follow up from there as well too. But it just gives a 30-day waiting period that they don't get charged fees or penalties for payment.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I feel it's a fair request to extend it for 30 days, give people a little breathing room, as long as they understand it's going to be paid for June 1st.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to grant an extension for payment of quarterly property taxes? There being no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sean?
Aye.
Michael? Jacoinski?
Aye.
Unanimous. We voted to extend the payment of quarterly property taxes for 30 days. Annual town meeting warrant articles. Do we want to, highlight placeholders of warrant articles, or postpone this till the next meeting?
Either way, I think we just put on, just in the event that any board member wanted to bring up an article or wanted an issue to prepare and give solicitor and myself some time to put together, or the next meeting, we're going to have a draft warrant, and the selectmen can add issues there at any time. And we're certainly revising it all the way up until the final draft anyway. So I just want to put on for discussion, the deadline for submittals for departments are May 1st. And then it just wanted to highlight for board members to start thinking about if there are issues that we're bringing forward ourselves. I know the Government Affairs had talked about a couple that they're working on, and if there are any other committees or individual members that had issues that they wanted to put forward. So that was just mostly open up the discussion.
So the articles that the Government Affairs Committee is proposing for the board's consideration, some of them we've already supported, but maybe we should wait till the next meeting and
Yes.
formalize all that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Back to budget discussion. Before we start walking through the preliminary budget, has everyone had the opportunity to review the paramedic study the draft that we were presented? Does anyone have anything they want to discuss with that at this time? we will have to address it in time for the warrant and for the budget. So if you have questions, get them to Michael or to the, we'll run any questions anyone has about that to Michael, and he can search for answers. Did everybody get a copy of the facility department's capital plan?
The most recent one was part of the packet, like,
Okay.
yeah, so they should have that one.
Does anyone have any discussion about that at this point?
Well, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Sean?
so how are we, how do you want to do this? I mean, obviously, it's a big number this year, in that we're just getting this department off the ground. And I wasn't sure how we want, if we want to go piece by piece, or try and think of other alternate funding. I'll follow your lead on this. I just wasn't sure how we want to do this. This is kind of new.
The way I suggest that we pursue this is the larger capital projects will be listed individually as warrant articles with separate funding amounts, and it would be up to the Finance Committee to determine whether it was raise and appropriate or borrow for whatever articles they're inclined to support.
What do we decide what's the cutoff for larger?
Michael, what were we using for larger, what was the cutoff line for incorporating projects into the capital plan of the facility department versus warrant articles? 150?
Yeah, I don't think we really.
We didn't really set
established a list.
a hard line, Sean.
Okay. No, I understand, and it's a learning curve, I guess. I mean, for all of us. One of my concerns, and this is an awful time for us to be having to do this, but if these are numbers that are special occasions, then I get going on the town meeting. If it's just an increased cost of doing business that we've been kicking the can down the road, I kind of want to make sure that we let taxpayers know that this is our intent, that we created this facilities department to take a harder look at how we're taking care of our buildings and our parking lots and our roofs, and that we are putting money toward that, not on a special occasion basis, but on a annual, this is what we have to do basis.
Necessary basis.
That makes sense, Sean, but we can do that, make that evaluation at the next meeting when we go through the proposed warrant articles. Okay, next item is non-union employee COLA. The Board of Selectmen needs to vote to establish what the percentage is that we're recommending to the Finance Committee for COLAs for non-union town personnel. I would suggest that, consistent with the contract negotiations that we've had with the various town unions, that the Board of Selectmen consider a 2% COLA request for non-union employees. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we support that, a 2% non-union COLA increase for the next fiscal year.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Michael Jacoinski?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. Given that we have more time, I would like to just briefly go through this proposed budget and see if there's areas that individual members have concerns with. If everyone doesn't mind, I'll start at the top and run through, just like the moderator has in the past at
Yes.
town meeting, and just identify any places where someone might have a question or a proposal. The moderator's proposed budget. Any discussion? This isn't an approval tonight, this is just a familiarization and making sure people understand where some of the stuff is coming from. Board of Selectmen proposed budget. Fine.
Sorry,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Just to make note that the only increase so far is just in the computer line item, so.
Finance Committee. Town accountant. And I just want to make a note that as we go through this, a lot of these salaries need to be adjusted based on that 2% recommendation.
Right, Mr. Chair, yeah, there's some departments put in, you know, maybe their step, some didn't put in anything, so we'd have to do, based on the board's action tonight, I'll put together a spreadsheet showing each department what their step in COLA would be to come out to a hard number for your next budget.
Board of Assessors. Treasurer Collector's Office. Someone tell me if I'm moving this too quickly. Parking fines, town solicitor's budget, town clerk's budget, Conservation Commission,
Sorry.
Planning Board, and Zoning Board. Any questions about those? Montechusett Planning Commission, Economic Development Office, Town Hall Building Manager, that's all now in the Facility Department budget. Insurance and miscellaneous. I would like to propose that we evaluate what we've spent in the past 2 years under the Civic Fund, and then make sure there's enough in this request to significantly contribute to 3 long-time town programs: the fireworks program, the Old Home Day, and the Christmas concert. They're 3 community-wide events that are increasingly finding it difficult to raise funds privately, and we have made contributions to them in the past, but I'd like to increase this budget so that we can do a little bit more for each one of those activities that are town-sponsored and town-supported and do an awful lot to enhance the feeling of community in the town of Clinton.
Yes.
Okay, and Sean and I will work with Mike as the finance, the budget subcommittee to come up with the right number for that.
Yes.
Anything else in insurance and miscellaneous? Police department? Fire department? Just to point out, one of the big numbers is fire overtime, and that's driven by the almost crippling costs of hiring and training and putting in place firefighters. And it takes a year to, once you decide you want to fill a position or you have a vacancy, to get a list, to get the eligible names, and then get them trained and get them on the books. So in the meantime, whatever vacancies we have or whatever firefighters are in an academy training program, we're paying overtime to cover those. Building inspector, gas plumbing inspectors, sealer of weights and measures, electrical inspector, emergency management, animal control officer, the school department. Under the school department, I recommended to Mike that we plug in the governor's, the budget that reflects the governor's budget of recommended increases in Chapter 70. If that aid doesn't come through, as it's pretty clear it's not going to, we'll have to go back and reconsider that. But for now, those are the numbers that we have to work with, so that's what we should be starting with at least. Department of Public Works. Cemetery Department. Oh, that's in Facility Department now. Board of Health.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Sean.
I know there's no overtime line item in this department, but it's something I'm thinking, I know next year's gonna be worse than this year, and I know that they are, it's a very lean department that's working a lot of hours, so it's something, I don't know if we can go back, if we wanna deal with it, patching holes next year or looking at going forward, but I don't know. We all understand what they're up against. far as, either wages or expenses, I just want to make sure we're prepared, for what.
Expenses
Yeah,
should be
yeah,
increased.
we had already discussed this, Sean, at the last meeting with the chairman of the Board of Health, and I thought we agreed to include an additional $5,000
Yes.
in their expense budget. That was their request.
Okay, I remember that one. I just want to make sure that we're prepared in case. I think we're asking a lot of these people, and I just want to make sure that if, I just want to make sure they're being compensated for it. I'll follow the Board of Health Chair's lead on it.
Okay, and I think we need to be careful in consideration. There are a lot of other departments that are working above and beyond the call of duty at the same time. So if we're going to consider salaries, we need to consider a lot of salaries.
That's fair.
Council on Aging. Fire Department. Oh, wait a second.
Next
I
page.
gotta remember to keep flipping the pages here.
Department of
Oh, we
Veterans.
could be going in circles all
Yeah.
night.
Department of Veterans. I believe.
Veteran Services. The Veterans Agent, I think, had said that he could live with a little bit less, and depending on where we are in the budget, we may want to reduce that request from 220,000 to 200,000. We need to confirm that with him to make sure, but I think that's something we could do.
If needed.
The library. Parks and Recreation. Fuller Field Commission, they have a request for $10,500 for expenses. Those expenses should appear in the facility department. Human Resources. That person will be coming online shortly.
Yeah, I think we've been discussing about maybe doing some Zoom interviews to get that process moving again, so, we'd like to gauge the, interest of what we have so that we can get somebody on board. We'd love to have them on board for this, we're hoping by now, but at least for the next fiscal year, so we're gonna move forward on that.
Okay, Facility Department, I think this needs some further discussion or conversation with Russ before we present it as a budget. Okay, then we have an accumulation of miscellaneous accounts. Does anyone have any questions about those? The enterprise budgets are pretty self-explanatory. If anyone wants to grab any one of them, the ambulance, water and sewer. Or the rubbish or landfill enterprise funds. Are there any questions about that right now?
No.
The budget summary. Based on the requested line items, we have a proposed budget of $54,477,000.
54 million.
54 million, I'm sorry,
I
477,000.
wish it was.
454. That's going to need some work. We're going to have to go back through this in detail, or the subcommittee will. Does anyone have any questions about the use of resources? That's the monies that are available to defer the cost of these budgets.
Just to make a note, Mr. Chair, as we talked about the facilities, that number, two things. One is the capital improvement number is in the operating budget, so if that gets pulled out under articles or other sources of funding, that's the number that will change. Also, the number that's in the board's packet tonight, the facility director has kind of scaled back some of those projects, knowing it's going to be a difficult year. So this is the original number he submitted with his first budget, so.
For our next meeting, we'll have all that stuff
Yeah,
plugged into this.
Updated, yeah.
The local expenditures section, one item I'd like to see us work on is the snow and ice. That's the deficit, the 200,000. Michael, Is that the deficit we're
Right,
carrying
that's
forward?
proposed deficit. We don't have an exact number. I'll have that for the board, but that's just what's in the proposed right now. Last year, the deficit was about 295. This year was a little bit milder winter, so it may be under 200, but I know the chair has expressed in the past about wanting to try to fund the snow and ice account, so that we're not having these two-year funding cycles of having deficits that have to be carried over and going into the next fiscal year. That's the first thing we have to raise before we pay anything else. We have to pay a prior year debt. So it's something we can certainly look at if we can come up with an average or a comfortable number that we think will cover. The board has made strides in that number. It used to be 100,000, and it's up to 460 now. But we haven't.
We're still deficits. So just for purposes of explanation, at some point, 10 years ago, even longer,
Probably longer, yeah.
longer, the state allowed towns to overspend snow and ice as an emergency measure, and then carry that excess spending forward. So it allowed us to basically under appropriate for snow and ice removal and take it back the following year, so that, and it was a one-time advantage during difficult fiscal times that allowed us to create a balanced budget and keep operating. But now it's down to 200,000, but like Mike said, it was 495 a couple of years ago. We're carrying a deficit, so before we even start spending any money from our next fiscal year, we have to pay this back first, or pay this off first. And we've made strides to reducing it, and I think, I'm hoping that this year we can eliminate it or get it close to a small number that is more reflective of changing winters and changing seasons than us deliberately and intentionally underfunding that account. Hopefully, we can be successful this year, but that's something that the bottom line's gonna drive more than anything else. This could take all night, but does anyone have any questions about the listed items of sources of funding? This is how we allocate money towards the budget as well.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Sean?
And sorry, I missed some of it in the audio, but as Michael, I think, explained, just so people understand that we're working with the budget with a lot of state revenue sources that are very fluid right now. So that's why we are trying to do the best we can and probably not have firmer numbers for maybe 2 to 4 weeks. So the Chapter 70 and the other aid that's coming from the state is still being decided, and obviously we're all in extraordinary times. But just so people know that it's not us trying to figure out what's going on. It's just we have numbers that aren't final yet. So I just want to make sure everyone understands what's going on here.
About 50% of our operating budget is funded by state money, not property taxes. And and all we have to go by is the proposed budget until it's approved by the legislature. And right now, we're operating with the governor's recommended budget. We're fairly confident that's going to get reduced, but it has a huge impact on the town of Clinton. Most other cities and towns don't rely on state funds to the level that we do. So a 2% or a 5% reduction in state aid is a 2.5% reduction of our operating budget. So anything we do is contingent on what the legislature finally approves. So we could make another run at this and get what we believe is an excellent budget, but we could then a week later have to go back and cut another $1 million or $2 million out of it. So for now, what we're trying to use is what had appeared to be a high increase from the state especially towards the school department. But if the state doesn't provide those funds, we're going to have to find a way to at least keep them whole.
Yes.
Okay. If anyone has any questions later on about these sources of funding, we can talk about, you can contact Mike. or you can contact me. I prefer it go through Michael. But, and we'll review it again at our next meeting.
Mr. Chair, my only question, I'm just curious, does the treasurer have any idea or about what these recent events what effect that will have on our revenue via property tax, if any? Like, does he, I know, like you said, he's noticed that the payments have still been coming in, but he's recommended that we kind of wait 30 days or anything like that, but do you know I don't know, is there like some model or do they have any idea of what the impact could possibly be? Because it would affect what types of things we would be looking to do in the budget if we thought that there was going to be an impact from the local revenue.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue, if I may, Mr. Chair, the biggest issue would be our local receipts, that smaller number, that 2.7 million number.
Okay.
Because the property tax is the property tax, and unfortunately, you know, people are in difficult situation, and it's awful, but the town would be in first position if somebody didn't pay their property taxes.
Sure.
That the money is going to come in one way or the other. So,
Right.
So the property tax would be based on what is spent on the budget, based on the 2.5% levy. So at that number, it is, you know, we may not have a high collection rate, and we may go do a tax title takings, but in terms of on our books, that money is going to come in one way or another.
Right.
And the state aid is unknown right now, so that's what we really need, that piece of the puzzle. But the other issue is, I think we're, you know, cities and towns, as the chair mentioned, would have a lot more leeway because they have a lot more local sources of funding that could dry up, and they would be able to maybe make some projections. For us, it's only 2.7 million out of that 54 million proposed, so it's
Okay.
not a big number. And that's a conservative number that we used right now. It's a conservative number based on the last couple of years, what has been coming in. So there is some ability to use that number and take a reduction. The biggest factor of that 2.7, as you can see, is more than half of it is for excise tax revenue. So I'm sure if people are out of work and have difficulty, they're not going to be buying new cars. So that will be a number we could probably take a look at, and we can reduce that. But we do have some leeway right now, and then maybe go down a little bit on that to be conservative. But I think to answer your question, there isn't really a model out there to say, you know, it's going to go down 5%, 10%.
Sure.
But for us, that's really the only number we would be concerned about, whether we're going to have building permits or people buying cars. Again, some of that money that's in that local revenue, in that unclassified amount, is also payment in lieu of taxes that we get from the state for the MDC land, which is almost $100,000. So money like that is going to come in. If there's investment, you know, if the interest rates take a dive, you know, we'll take a look at that. But a lot of that money is excise tax, and certainly we'll keep an eye on that number and see what the trend is and what people will use for a trend on that. But for the most of it, I think we're okay. And like I said, we probably have a couple 100,000 buffer there anyways as well too. So I think we're okay. I think my biggest thing that I'm still worried about is the state aid, because it is such a big piece of it. If the state makes a cut based on what we were going to get, then we can live with that. If it's going to be a cut based on what we already have, then that's a problem, because just cost of living for salaries increases is over $500,000 when you factor in the schools, or, you know, upwards to $500,000, you know, $300,000-400,000, plus our health insurance increases. Now you're talking over $500,000. So just to do nothing, we're looking at probably $250,000 to $750,000 that we're going to need. So if we get cut, either the level funding is a cut or get cut below level funding, then that's a huge impact for us. So we're really anxious for what the state's gonna do. And again, they're hoping that the federal stimulus money will backfill that so that they can try at least make a decent commitment to the cities and towns, so.
Okay, unless anyone has any other questions, that concludes our preliminary budget discussion for tonight. Is there anything else under old or new business, or anything anyone wants specifically included on the agenda of our next meeting besides the budget and the warrant articles?
I don't know if it's a agenda item, but just specific to the human resources search. I know it kind of got stalled because of recent events, but I would just ask, I mean, the rest of the board members can chime in, but I think what's important is that the administrator, the town administrator, move forward with the search and just pick the dates, but don't, I know, I'm a member of that search committee. There's some other board members, there's some other groups that are on that search committee, but that search committee is really just advisory to you, so I would just recommend that you and Dr. Meyer kind of move forward, get candidates, handle interviews, let the subcommittee know the dates that you're planning on doing the interviews, and if people can make it, that's great, but it's not, I think usually we like to structure the dates to try to get as many people from the search committee present as possible, but I think in light of what's going on now, and in the spirit of trying to keep that search going, I'd just say, get some viable candidates, get some interview dates, let the subcommittee know what the dates are. If people can make it, they can make it. If they can't, even if it's just you and Dr. Meyer, if nobody can make it, I would say just still move forward, just to keep the process going, and opening that up to feedback from other board members, because other people may feel differently about that, but that's the way that I feel about the human resources search at this point.
My opinion is that it is the town administrator's appointment, and the subcommittee is an advisory committee to him, and I would strongly recommend that he move forward with or without the subcommittee participating. It's too difficult in this environment to get that type of consensus and agreement, and I think that's part of the town administrator's responsibility and authority, is to just move forward and interview the candidates, get whatever input you can from who's ever available, and move forward and make the appointment.
Yeah. No, thank you to the board members. I appreciate that. That's great. And I've had some discussions, email with Dr. Meyer about that, and as long as everyone's okay with that, that's great. We certainly want to keep people involved, but if we're able to move forward with or without people, that's helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure Dr. Meyer will be supportive and helpful in the evaluation process, but
Right.
the quicker, the sooner,
The better.
I know there's a lot of other stuff going on, and even the candidates might have availability issues, but
Right.
I would say just pedal to the metal and get it done.
But one good thing is that the committee has met and they have created a short list, so that's been a big help, because we had, how many did we have,
150 or something.
150 applications, so to be able to get that down to a manageable list was a big help.
Okay, so there's no other business before the board. Before we have a motion to adjourn, our next meeting would be scheduled for May 6th. Is that after the limit on public participation in the meeting?
Yeah, that's May 4th is the order expires May 4th unless it's extended, but the
Right.
board will be after that.
The way
Okay,
he was talking tonight, I think they're gonna extend it, but again, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Right.
okay, so our next meeting is scheduled for May 6th unless something comes up that requires our attention sooner. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sean?
Aye.
Michael? Did he say aye?
Yeah.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen, unanimous, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.